Chris, we made it through the Christmas season. We are back, and now we are ready to preview Ohio State against Missouri in the Cotton Bowl. On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you?
Hey, I'm just excited to have football back, Eric. That's my big thing. Uh, now, don't get me wrong. As a Browns fan, things have been going pretty well this year, but nothing beats Ohio State football. So I'm really pumped, really excited about. You know, it's game week. It is game week, Friday. It seems a little weird to have it on a Friday night, but that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, I made the mistake of putting Saturday this morning because I'm so used to games being on a Saturday, but it is going to be on the 29th Friday. It is the first of the, I guess they call them the New Year's Six Bowls, even though that's not a
The
thing
29th.
anymore. So, but excuse me, we are excited to go ahead and break this down here in this first part, historically and statistically. Later on, Aaron will be on. He'll be breaking down some film, and we do have some special guests from a Missouri podcast that'll be joining us as well to look at it from their perspective as well. So, all of that being said, let's jump into the first part of this, Chris, and take a look at this from a historical side. Of course, the game is this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN or ESCCPN, as we like to call it. No word yet on what the referee crew will be. Maybe the Pac-12, the ACC, something on that nature. But check it out on ESPN this Friday. Set them DVRs if you need to, etc. All right, looking at this thing by the numbers, Ohio State leads the all-time series. Believe it or not, Chris, 10-1-1. We've played them 12 times. Back in the 1940s, they went through almost an entire decade of playing each other back and forth. However, most of those games were played at Columbus. Only one time in that 12-game series did we go to Columbia, Missouri, to take on the Tigers in their home field. Everything else was played in Columbus, Ohio. Ohio State won the last two in a row. Of course, those were both in the 1990s in a home and home with John Cooper. Last meeting 1998, 25 years ago. Buckeyes won that contest 35-14. I actually remember that game. I was 17 years old, Chris.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember. Was that the game where Katzenmoyer totally decimated? Oh, no, that was '97, wasn't it?
That was 97. 97 was the first game in that
That was
series
the
in
fit. Yeah,
Columbia.
yeah.
So this was the home game. The only game in Columbia, like I said, was 97. Ohio State won 31-10. Largest margin of victory came back in 1944. That was a 54 to nothing shellacking. Largest margin of defeat was in 1976. Woody Hayes lost to him 21-22 at the shoe. Ohio State's longest win streak over the Tigers is 5. Started in 1939 and went through 1945. Ohio State's record in the Cotton Bowl is, and interestingly enough, 2-0. Missouri's record in the Cotton Bowl is 2-1. Ryan Day's record against the SEC, Chris, is 0-2. Elia Drinkwitz, the head coach there for the Tigers, his record in bowl games is 0-2. So something's got to give there. Either Ryan Day's finally going to get a win over an SEC team, or Coach Drinkwitz is going to get a win in a bowl game, one of the two. Looking at the last 10 matchups against Missouri, again, Ohio State's dominated with 8 wins. There was one tie in 1946, and the lone loss came in 1976. Of course, all of that was before my time. I do remember the 97 and 98 games, again, as Chris alluded to it, the Katzenmoyer game in 1997 when he about broke their quarterback in half. So that is kind of the look at this thing historically. I think this is probably the biggest game between the two teams, Chris, just looking at things in perspective of history, because it's the only one that's coming at the end of the season in a bowl game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is really huge for both these teams because Ohio State has to show that they're getting it right. You've got a new quarterback. Speculation is starting to come out now that We may not see Marvin Harrison Jr., so there's going to be some new guys out there receiving.
We won't see Fleming.
We won't see Fleming. So, I think a lot of guys from Ohio State have a lot to prove. Ryan Day needs to prove himself against the SEC and that he can win the big games. And, Missouri's a team that really wants to show that they are going to be a force in the SEC. They're a team that gave Georgia all they wanted this year. They played some solid football this year. So they have a lot to prove that they are, really a legitimate powerhouse. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is a top 10 matchup too. So it is a New Year's Six game against two of the top. Excuse me. Still dealing with this cough apparently. Didn't cough all day till we started recording. Top 10 matchup, and you have, like you said, an SEC team that was the third best team in the SEC, a Big Ten team, second best team in the Big Ten, going head to head in a New Year's Six bowl. This is still a big deal, and if you want to project this out into the future, like you said, then which team is going to take the necessary steps to make sure that they set themselves up to be a CFP team next year when it moves to 12 teams? There's a good chance that both these teams have aspirations of being in the college football playoff again next year. Based off of what I'm hearing from a lot of players probably going to come back next year off this roster, Ohio State might be one of, if not the number one team to start the season off next year, just looking at the cast of characters, the roster, etc. Not sure about Missouri's future on that aspect, but you got to feel good if you're a Missouri Tiger fan that you're number one, A, in this bowl game, and number two, your trajectory under Coach Drinkwitz is moving in the right direction.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, they're not a team to be slept on. If Ryan Day and the Buckeyes go in there thinking that this is going to be a cakewalk, as is, and let's face it, typically if you get an SEC team other than Georgia or Alabama, it's usually not near, uh, you know, as competitive as you would think it was going to be.
Depending on the year, an LSU, an Auburn, a
Yeah,
Florida, depending on the year, Tennessee last year. Uh, Missouri is that team this year. They are that next tier team in the SEC, not named Georgia or Alabama. So you need to win this game.
yeah, you have to. I mean, it's that simple. And like I said, this has got to be huge for Ryan Day. I think he has to take this very seriously because right now, as much as a lot of people may still not want to hear this, Ryan Day is that seat's getting a little warm. It's getting warm. And I really feel like if he doesn't come out and have a good showing in this bowl game, it goes from warm to hot right before the next season kicks off.
Very good possibility that that could be the case. Let's look at this thing statistically now. Break these two teams down from the stat point perspective. You want to go with Missouri or Ohio State first,
Let's
Chris?
start with Missouri first.
Let's
So the
do it.
Missouri Tigers come in, they average 442.9 yards per game. That is 23rd best in college football. Third down conversion rate of 44.4%. That is 31st in college football. They are the best team in the country in red zone scoring at 98.2%. Total defense, 347.2 yards per game given up, which is good for 39th. They are very opportunistic with a turnover margin of +9, which is good for 12th in the country. Penalties per game, now this is a spot where they trip up a little bit. They average 7.17 penalties per game, which is 116th in college football. Individually, the offense is led by Brady Cook. The quarterback comes out 233 out of 361 passing for 3,189 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Cody Schrader, he's their leading rusher with 247 carries for 1,489 yards, 13 touchdowns. And Luther Burden III, he is their top receiver, 83 catches, 1,197 yards, 8 touchdowns. Defensively, it starts with Joseph Charleston, 59 tackles on the season to lead the team. Darius Robinson, He has 7.5 sacks to lead the team there as well. 4 interceptions lead the team by Chris Abrams Drain. 2 forced fumbles by both Christian Williams and Johnny Walker Jr. Johnny Walker Jr. Gotta
Yeah.
love it.
Every time he gets a forced fumble, it just tastes right. I'm thinking for their fan base, that's got to be a drinking
It,
game, right?
it has to be. It has to be. 2 fumble recoveries by Tristan Newson, and then a defensive touchdown each for Dalen Carnell and Jaden Jerrigan. Kicking, you know, not bad, but not great. 24 of 30 on field goals for Harrison Mevis. He has a long of 61. He is 43 of 44 on extra points. So solid in the kicking game, but not, not tremendous. We flip it over to Ohio State. Ohio State comes in averaging 425 yards per game. That's 35th best in college football. Third down conversion, they are 46.4%, which is good for 18th in the country. Red zone scoring. Now, here's something that we've really got to work on. We are only 86% in red zone scoring, which is only 56th in the country. But total defense, 259.9 yards, which is good for third in the country. We have to be more opportunistic because we do only have we have a -1 turnover margin. That's 74th in the country. Penalties per game, we've been pretty solid here. 5.5 for 45th in the country. Now, there is a change at quarterback, Eric. Uh, Kyle McCord is no longer with us as he's up watching Syracuse just get pummeled. Devin Brown is going to take the starting snaps. He is 12 of 22 passing on the season for 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. But Eric, this kid looked really good in those goal line packages prior to the injury. Travion Henderson, 137 carries for 870 yards and 11 touchdowns. We talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. He does lead the team in receptions with 67 for 12, 11, and 14 touchdowns, but he is, I'm pretty sure, a non-factor in this game, which means it's going to Emeka Egbuka, 35 catches, 452 yards, 4 touchdowns. Defensively, Tommy Two Thumbs is at it again, leading the team in tackles with 80. JT Tuimoloau comes in with 4 sacks on the season to lead the team. 2 interceptions by Jordan Hancock leads the team as well. 8 pass deflections by Denzel Burke and Josh Proctor both. So these guys, they may not be pulling it down every time, but they're breaking them up. The kicking game, 15 of 18 for Jaden Fielding on field goals with a long of 47, and 49 of 50 on extra points. So, Eric, that is where we stand statistically. What are your thoughts?
Got to keep him out of the red zone. I would say we have a bend but don't break style of defense in this game, which has been very kind of the MO this year for Jim Knowles to not take too many risks. I'd like to see him dial up a few more blitzes than what we saw against that team up north. I think sometimes that can create some opportunities when you have a good quarterback like they have. Probably not going to surprise him with anything that he hasn't already seen. So you got to play with everything in front of you, but that doesn't mean that you don't get a little bit more aggressive and throw a rusher or two at him every now and then, especially on third and longs, right? They're very good at running the football. Um, we've been really good at stopping passing, and I would say at times we've been good at stopping the run. Go back to the last game we played against that team up north. How many times could we have gotten off the field on third and shorts, fourth and shorts, and we didn't get off the field? We have to do that in this football game. We cannot allow Missouri to control the clock, control the line of scrimmage, stay ahead of the chains. If they do that, given the firepower that they have offensively, given how good they are in the red zone, that spells trouble for this Ohio State team, given the fact we don't know offensively how good we're going to be.
Yeah,
No Marvin Harrison, no Kyle McCord, no Julian Fleming. That's 3 offensive starters that you're going to be without. But I'm not too worried about losing McCord. I think Devin Brown offers Ryan Day a little bit more flexibility in the run pass options he can
yeah.
call. Um, we don't have Chip Trayanum in this game either. And if you remember back during the red zone offense that you alluded to when going over the statistics with Devin Brown, Chip was his lead blocker on a lot of those goal line runs that he
Yes.
had. Who's going to step in and do that? Is it going to be a Dallin Hayden? Do we have someone else who can come in and kind of be that person? Do we motion Cade Stover into the backfield and he becomes a lead blocker in those situations? It's going to be interesting to me to watch offensively what Ryan Day draws up, given the fact that we have a new quarterback. Who's going to step up in the wide receiver room? Emeka Egbuka probably playing in the slot. Who's going to be on the outside? I think Carnell Tate might have a breakout game. We've seen this before multiple times. Marvin Harrison did it once in the Rose Bowl with Jackson Smith and the Jigba, right? Maybe this is Carnell Tate's day to become QB2 for next year. Um,
Let's not
Brand,
forget Brandon Ennis. I mean, him
yeah,
and McCord hooked up for a big one at Purdue.
they did. And, wouldn't that be great that if Brandon Hennis and Devin Brown have some chemistry out there that we just didn't know about because they were working together on the side in practice when they were getting second team reps? There's a lot of those questions offensively. How much has the offensive line progressed since the last time they were on the field? Are they going to be able to win the line of scrimmage? If they can win the line of scrimmage consistently and give Travion Henderson lanes to run the football and Dallin Hayden when he's called upon, I feel very good that we're going to score more than enough points to win this football game, given how good our defense has played this season, Chris.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I look for this to be. I think this is going to be a little bit different type of game. I think we're going to be even more run heavy this game, given the fact that Devin Brown hasn't quite gotten all the reps. He's coming back off of injury. Yeah, I mean, we know Ryan Day's going to throw the ball, no doubt about it. And he's got to see what he's got in that quarterback. But I would not be surprised to see Dallin Hayden and Travion Henderson both have a pretty decent game. Um, for me, I want to see if losing any of that defensive back depth hurts us at all. We have several guys from the defensive back room who've moved on to the
Well,
portal.
what we did in the depth, Lathan Ransom's injured,
Yeah,
so he's not going to play. This will be Proctor's last game as a Buckeye. He has no more eligibility left after
yeah,
this game. I'm assuming this is probably Denzel Burke's last game as a Buckeye. I think he's a first round draft pick talent.
Well, now
Maybe, but
I thought so, but now I'm seeing a lot of draft boards that have him in the second, even as low as the third round. I
I
don't get
think
that.
I think I think that's a bunch of BS, honestly. You and I have watched him all year long. He's a first round talent
Yeah,
easily.
absolutely.
I think he has a good game. He probably bounces to the draft, but we'll see. The Tommy Eichenberg is questionable for this game as of today when we record this on
Yeah,
Tuesday, December 26th. Um, he was in shoulder pads, and that was the only pads he was wearing. So I think it's going to be probably game time decision for him. Cody Simon will take his spot if he can't go. Steel Chambers is ready to go. I would love to see him initiate the CJ Hicks defense in this game.
yeah,
Get the kid out
absolutely.
there. Get him out there. I don't know why they've held him back so much. The only thing I can assume is he's just not been ready to play. I mean, I sometimes you
Do you think it's
play.
that, or do you just think it's been so hard for him to get Steele? When you only have two linebackers really on the field, and Steele and Eichenberg have both had tremendous, tremendous seasons the last two seasons.
I don't
Do you
know
think that
that.
that's
Yeah,
played
because
a factor in it?
if you're going to play him, you would play him for Steele, right? I don't think CJ's
Right.
your middle linebacker, which is what Tommy is. But given the 4-2-5 that Knowles likes to run, I'm not so sure that CJ isn't more of a hybrid.
Yeah. That linebacker safety.
Mm-hmm. So and are you going to play him over Sonny Styles if that's the position that you would plug him in on this defense? Probably not. I don't know. I just feel like at some point this season they really should have put CJ in there
Yeah.
and
I
and
agree.
and see what he could have done because when he has had the chance at end of ball games to flash, boy does he flash.
Yeah,
Well, we'll see. We'll see if he gets playing time. I think Cody Simon is definitely the go-to if Tommy can't go because he's rock solid in the middle. He's gonna he knows the defense. He's gonna put people in the right position as the quarterback of that defense. There's no way that they move Steele over to middle or put CJ in the middle if Tommy can't go. And plus, Steele's also been very solid throughout his career, moving over to
yeah,
that linebacker room. And maybe that was just the whole thing. CJ just got kind of blocked until next year, but that's an option to look at as well. This defensive line's got to get home.
they have to.
They have got to get home in this game. They have got to create pressure um, on the passing game. They've got to plug running holes in the running game. This game defensively, I think, sits on the shoulders of that defensive line.
Yeah,
If they look like they did against Michigan, I think Missouri's got a chance to beat us.
yeah. I don't disagree. I'm telling you, Eric, this is a team that I think, like I said, usually when we get that third, fourth best team in the SEC, there's such a big fall off that we tend to look past them. But this is a legit team right now, and with us just not knowing what we've got, especially on the offensive side of the ball, the defense has to step up. And I'm with you. I think that I'm not too worried about our guys in the middle of the defensive line. I think that the Tyleek, I think that Mike Hall Jr., I think those guys are going to be okay. Uh, I'm a bit more concerned about the fact that what we haven't seen. I mean, we've seen flashes of it, but what we haven't seen consistently out of Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. And I almost feel like if you were to ask me, now I know the draft, if you look at the draft boards, I think they've got JTT late first, early second round guy right now, just based on his ability. I think they've got Jack Sawyer somewhere in the third round. Man, Eric, these guys should both be, first round draft picks based on their ability. They
we
just haven't
thought
shown it on the field.
we thought coming into the season that they had the opportunity to do that, and it again, it was kind of a letdown this season on the defensive line. The development has just not been there since Chase Young.
Yeah.
You know, you had,
And is
you
that
had
an indictment on the players that we're bringing in, or is this an indictment on the coaching staff, or is this something about, like we've alluded to before, that Jim Knowles and Larry Johnson just cannot work on the same defense?
I don't know that that's necessarily the case because this trend started before that, before Jim Knowles was
Yeah,
here. You had five-star Jonathan Cooper who didn't see the field until his senior year, really. You had Zach Harrison, who another five-star who never
never
really developed.
materialized. Yeah,
So and it's not like the defensive line has been putrid. It's just not been what to the level that we expect. When you look at the excuse me, when you look at these other teams statistically, and you see you have a guy with 7.5 sacks leading the team, 9 sacks leading the team, 8 sacks leading the team late in the season, and our guy leading the team in sacks is with 4,
four.
makes you question. You got to
Absolutely.
question, and far be it from you and I to question the legendary status of Larry Johnson, but at this point, one has to ask the question. Ryan Day's probably asking that question. Where's the production on the defensive line for me, guys? My first year, I had Chase Young absolutely wrecking offenses from the edge. No one could stop him. Teams literally tried to triple team him and couldn't do it. And he hasn't had anything like that. Now, I understand that Chase Young
Freak.
he's a once in a generation guy, but so was Nick Bosa. So was Joey Bosa. And
Right.
we got him back to back to back. 6 consecutive years of just domination from a defensive end. And we all thought Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau were going to be those guys.
Now be careful, Eric, because you're starting to sound a lot like you're Kyle McCord bashing on the defense now.
I'm not bashing.
No, I'll
You
just
know,
say that. But I mean, if you look at it, that's very much what we went through at the quarterback position. We went. We had Dwayne Haskins, we had Justin Fields, we had uh,
Stroud.
Stroud, and then McCord's biggest problem. I mean, he had other problems. I mean, let's face it, his technique was just not great. Um, but I think one of his biggest problems was he just couldn't live up to the pressure. He couldn't live up to the standard. And I kind of feel like that's what we're seeing out of our defensive ends right now as well. Guys who flash but can't consistently do it, that are just not living up to the standard.
You make a good point. You go back to that Penn State game 2 years ago with JTT, had the greatest statistical game from a defensive end in the history of college football.
But
You
what has he
know,
done since?
there's been flashes,
Yeah,
but the consistency's not been there. You're right. Aaron Felt has publicly said he feels both of them would benefit from coming back and having one more year of development. I gotta push back on that a little bit and say, where's the development been for the first 3 years?
yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, we go ahead and have them come back. And don't get me wrong, I would love to see them come back and materialize into what we think they should be. But at the same time, in gaining that 1 year, how far are we going to set our recruiting back because of people jumping in the portal all of a sudden?
Very good possibility. Good question. Something that we're definitely going to have to keep our eye on.